Washington football. Woo!
I think everybody will be all ears.
And what's going on, everybody? And welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listofrederick.com. But we are now joined by the soothest voice in Washington, Mr. Pete Medhurst. You heard him, obviously host on 980. How you doing tonight, sir?
Gentlemen, good to be with you guys, as always.
Yes, sir, and we got to get your immediate reaction to this because it just got said about an hour ago that Carson Wentz and Bobby McCain have both been released. I think Bobby McCain saves the team about $4.8 million. It looks like Carson Wentz is saving about $26. So in two moves today, they've saved about $30 million in cap space. Is that right?
Yeah, and look, I mean, I don't think we're surprised, quite frankly, by either one.
Right.
If you look at the safety depth of this team, and I really thought Bobby bought into the role they asked him to play this year. So this isn't about an effort issue with Bobby, in any way, shape, or form. I thought the role that was asked of him, I thought he did fine. He's look, with the safety depth on this team, though, certainly becomes expendable at this point. Carson Wentz, none of us are surprised by that. The savings is just too great. The fact that you get out with no cap penalty, no dead cap hit at all, basically for him. That was as questionable a move as it was to bring him in. This was by far a unanimous move for Ron to move on at this point.
Right. And that was a good thing about Wentz. I remember hearing last year when he was brought in, it was like, he's got a year to prove himself. If he doesn't, then we can cut ties year two without any cap hits or anything. So who else are some other possible cap casualties that we could look out for over the coming days?
Look, I think when you look at the rest of the roster, outside of, to me, doing anything on the offensive line, unless you do something deep in the wide receiver or tight end room, Logan Thomas is a guy that is clearly, his name has come up. They have young tight end depth. The question is, how close are those guys to being ready to play the chief role? What will they do with Deron Payne? Will they franchise tag him and then try to negotiate at that point? Could they, look to trade somebody else on that defensive line? If somebody calls you and say, hey, we'll give you a bundle for Montez Sweat, would you be interested in listening at that point? Otherwise, in terms of releases, Logan Thomas is clearly the next guy in the crosshairs, I think, just because of the depth at the position. But if you don't believe those guys are ready to take it on yet, then by all means, you bring him back and keep on going. So, and ultimately, look, let's face it, what they do, how great a splash they make in the off season depends on the timing of a sale and who ends up taking over and when. Because right now you're kind of I don't want to say you're a rudderless ship, because you're not a rudderless ship. You got people that are making decisions. The question is what kind of decisions can Ron, Martin, and Marty ultimately make?
Yeah, exactly. And sticking with the offseason and free agency question, as they continue to free up more cap space, like you just mentioned, they don't know exactly how big of a splash they're going to be able to make. But, excuse me, what position do you expect them to attack in free agency going into the start of free agency?
I mean, Mike, I think, look, offensive line and linebacker are places you got to significantly look at. The question is ultimately how much depth is out there when you're looking, what kind of things are you shopping for at the flea market? And right now, I would almost be willing to go with the draft at this point. Keep it as young and simple as possible if you can. I still believe this group may, depending on, without, having a conversation with Ron and asking him what he thinks about the way guys performed, and not that you'd get a very honest answer, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they brought in Andrew Norwell back, but I also believe they think maybe Chris Paul is ready after a year of understudy in the room to take over at that position. If you listen to the radio show, I am all about John Michael Schmitz on the offensive line. I believe he can play center and guard for you and step in and start tomorrow at either position. The question is, how healthy is Chase Roulier? at this point. The last couple of seasons, unfortunately, he hasn't been very dependable. You get into the draft, somebody like Trenton Simpson in the first round from Clemson is a guy that can ultimately, athletically, I think, play the position. He can offer you coverage options. And the way Jack Del Rio has defended a lot with the 4-2-5, you're asking more of your linebackers than just be downhill tacklers. They have to have coverage responsibilities in a 4-2-5. I believe Simpson gives you the ability to do that. And if you're picking at 16, and if you move back maybe a couple of spots, you still might be able to land the Clemson linebacker, in my opinion, at that point. There are other guys, I think, second day that can offer you, true middle linebacker type help. You get into issues about how good the coverage ability would be at that point. But in a division in which you have three teams that you play against that want to run the football first in all of Philadelphia, Dallas, and the Giants, that middle linebacker is going to have a ton of responsibility. And that's an area that they've got to look at, I think, hard, either in free agency or certainly early in the draft.
Yeah, and this offseason is going to be an exciting one for Washington fans. I feel like more so than years past. Eric Bieniemy, his press conference really captivated Washington, I think is a good way to be able to say that. What was your reaction to Eric Bieniemy being hired and his press conference? And then off of that, Sam Howell, do you agree with the decision to go with Sam Howell as quarterback one? And what do you think Eric Bieniemy does for Sam Howell?
Let's start at the end first. I was a Sam Howell mark. I was stunned that Sam Howell went third day. Absolutely stunned. Now, I know the only metric that he doesn't meet is the size factor. He doesn't walk off the bus looking like Carson Wentz, a strapping 6'5", and chest all stuck out when he walks off the bus. When everybody goes, "Oh, that's the quarterback." To me, I'm cool with going that route. Give him a shot. Again, what are we seeing around the league? Jalen Hurts, a perfect example right now in Philadelphia. We got a guy, it's a second-day pick, a little bit cheaper. You're not committed to that fifth-year option on him. He's out playing already the contract, but the great thing is he's still cheap. And Howie Roseman has been able to bring in what he needs. He's going to be able to re-sign some guys here in this offseason. They got a lot of free agents they've got to bring back there in Philadelphia and some key guys as well. So I think going the inexpensive route is a great way to go. And if it's not working, you can always do something else. But if you hit on it, and remember, Patrick Mahomes played one game his first year, the last game of the season. And I believe Eric Bieniemy will, with those receivers and running backs and their versatility, I'm not saying it's going to look like what Kansas City did, because I think that's disingenuous to think all of a sudden it's going to come in and look like the Kansas City offense. But if Bieniemy is anywhere near as creative as the man he's worked under for several years now, he's been on that staff for 10 years. If he's even remotely as creative using some of those concepts, I do believe it's a very exciting time coming up for Washington fans from an offensive perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think Sam Howell should be perfect for that offense. I mean, with these receivers, you talk about his big arm and just him being able to move around in the pocket. I'm excited to see what Bieniemy can do with him. But I don't know if you've heard of this. Kyle mentioned this offseason being exciting. There might be a sale. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard for us fans to put a finger on the pulse because new things are coming out every day. What is the latest that you've heard about this?
Well, I mean, look, if we all had $6.5 billion laying around, we'd get a group together and we'd go buy the team because our name isn't Bezos. That appears to be, the magic formula. $6.5 billion, and your name not being Bezos might get you a deal at this point. Look, I mean, Josh Harris is already touring the facilities. Okay, that means he's serious about it. Whether he's actually put a bid quote in, as some say, he hasn't put in a bid yet. But I mean, they let the guy tour the facilities. I'm not sure you let a guy tour your facilities if he's not serious about buying the football team in this situation. So we're going to get I think we're going to get a deal done at some point. The ultimate question is Dan's going to want it on his terms. And if I've got an investment that's worth that kind of money, I'm going to want it on my terms, one way, shape, or form. I think somebody will eventually meet the price. There's multiple groups out there. Tillman Fertitta, the latest, the Rockets owner, who is I think would also be a very good owner. You'd like to have a Tillman Fertitta. It's about winning. It's about resources. ton of resources into the University of Houston via his money. Look where Houston's ranked right now in college basketball, #1 in the country. So that's a guy that believes in giving you the resources you need to do your job. That's what you want in a new owner. You don't want somebody that's just happy to be part of the Billionaire Boys Club. You want somebody that's going to invest and give you the resources you need as a coach, as a general manager. For Jason Wright as a team president on the business side, you want somebody that's going to give you the resources to hire the right people so you can get out and market this team and do your thing. That I think we'll get a deal done. It's just a matter of timing right now. And I do believe that end of March owners meeting is still a very pertinent target date to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Now, Pete, to wrap this up, only a couple more questions for you, sir. But one of the things is like a possible thing to come up in this offseason is Hard Knocks. And let's just not talk about Hard Knocks in particular. I think we'd all be very excited for that. But how important is it for Washington to scrimmage against another team through training camp?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that when you can control the environment, what's the one thing teams don't want to do? They don't want to bang on each other. Their own practices. The league limits how much you can hit as it is. The Players Association agreement limits that. So why wouldn't you want to go out with because you have one less exhibition game now? Why wouldn't you want another workout against another team to go up against different DBs and give your wide receivers a different look, gives your quarterback a different look? You want to be able to do those things, even if it's just 7-on-7 type stuff. So to me, it makes perfect sense to go out and do that instead of banging on your own guys and give your team a different look on both sides of the football. I'm all for that. I'm just one of those guys who would support that idea wholeheartedly.
Especially for Sam Howell, getting reps in there against live action.
Absolutely. The more experience, the better, right? Especially for a young quarterback. My next question for you, the Combine is coming up, Pete. I know you're not a draft savant, but is there anybody going in the Combine that you're excited, that you want to see more of, that you're very interested in for the Commanders?
In terms of the Commanders, I'm just going to sit there and look at the linebackers, the offensive linemen. I want to look at some corner depth. I'm looking at guys second and third day from a corner perspective. Somebody is eye-popping, somebody does great job. When you look at the different drills, with hip turn, things of that nature, how do they do? Especially with those DBs. Guy got stiff hips. I can't bring him into my defensive backfield at that point. You look at this team, outside of those areas we talked about, they're in good shape from a starting standpoint. So to me, looking at linemen, looking at, guys that maybe show you a little bit more athleticism as an offensive lineman, I think we're definitely looking at defensive line depth at this point. You'd be looking second day, third day guys from a defensive line standpoint. And maybe there's an athlete, a guy that really shows out that, shows some explosion that you could do some things with maybe second or third day and find a little bit of value out there.
I absolutely love it. But now my last question for you, sir. Let's look at this team and Eric Bieniemy now as the offensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio having a top 5 defense to end the season last season. That obviously has to carry over. But what player would you say, it's way too early to do this, but one player that's on the team right now that you expect to take a big step this season?
Are we excluding Sam Howell from this conversation or including Sam Howell?
You can include it if you see fit.
Look, okay, I'll give Sam's obvious. That's an obvious one. Chris Paul, who I mentioned earlier on the offensive line, because that's a guy that I thought I saw a lot of him at Tulsa. His teammate ended up starting a lot for the Cowboys, a guard and tackle this year. I thought they were really good. Tulsa was a great running football team under Philip Montgomery while Chris Paul was there. I think Chris Paul is a guy, if he can answer one of the questions for them at the guard spot, it enables them to go use resources in another area on another player. And I think Chris played well in that Dallas game at the end of the regular season. I was really encouraged by the way he played. So he would be a guy to me that takes a big step because I think he can end up starting at left guard for this football team.
Yeah, just like Sam Howell in that one game showing a lot, we really hope that both of those players can help us because those are two areas of it very important. So in one position that we have not been able to figure out in over 30 years. Pete, I can't thank you enough for joining us this evening. You guys should go follow Pete Medhurst on Twitter at Pete on Sports. Sir, thank you so much as always, Mr. Medhurst. I appreciate your time. Have a good night, sir.
You got it. Always good to be with you guys.
Appreciate you, Pete. Have a good night.
See ya.
You too.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Pete Medhurst. The voice is so smooth. So smooth.
Yeah, super pumped for Chris Paul, man. I mean, just a season or two ago, he was helping lead the Suns to an NBA championship, and now all of a sudden he's coming in here, might win a starting job on the offensive line.
Can't forget about Kim K. Can't forget about Kim K.
That's why he had to leave the NBA, I heard.
You called him like, oh, you're not like a draft savant. And I was like, Pete actually does know like a lot of the prospects. Like Pete, when I do listen to him, he's always breaking down different prospects and like pulling dudes that like go in like the 5th, 6th round. They were like end up being like good players in the league. So he definitely knows his stuff when it comes to the draft. So whenever people check this out, listen to it. Definitely take what he's saying to heart.
Yeah, well, I just meant he's not like Ian Cummings.
He's
like
not
of course.
Because it's hard for a radio host especially to be able to do all of that. There's so much that they have to be able to cover. It's unfortunate to do that. But before we are joined by our next guest and we answer our fan questions, and we have a lot of them for this episode, let's do our prospect breakdowns for these. We were submitted through via Twitter or our Discord chat. Mine was submitted by Devin, was submitted in by Andy Lockhart in the UK. Devin Akane. I'm going to have him the running back at Texas A&M. Hall, you're going to do Aluzgun Ulawatimi, the center from Michigan, number 55. And then Reed, I forget, who are you doing?
Sam Laporta, the tight end out of Iowa.
It's always the tight ends. And
what can I say? That's one of my favorite things in the world.
I shouldn't be surprised. So,
nice
Reed, if you want to start us off first with the tight backside, sir.
No, I don't.
You sure?
Okay, no, I will. Sam Laporta, tight end out of tight end U. It has become over the last, I'd say 10, 15 seasons. Sam Laporta, he's listed at 6'4", 249 pounds, not 250 pounds, 249. And he's a real throwback Iowa tight end. He does everything, it seems like. He's a very good route runner. He's doesn't seem to drop a lot of balls. He's a very good security blanket for a young quarterback, especially. And from the few games I watched, he really seemed to do a good job working all levels of the field. I mean, I saw him go deep down the seams. He was working the mid game. He was working the short game. And he seems to be a fairly decent athlete, I think, for somebody who's going to be a late day 2 pick or possibly early day 3 pick. He seemed like he has the tools to be a good blocker. He definitely tried. He seems like he's hard-nosed, going to get in your face, going to put his face mask
coming
to your
from Iowa.
chest.
You better be.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But the concerns with him is he's not there yet as a blocker. He definitely needs some coaching if he can even become a full all-around blocker. But in today's NFL, I don't even think it really matters. You look at some of these guys outside from George Kittle. A lot of these guys aren't great blockers, but and he also didn't dominate at Iowa. Now, a lot of that you can say it's because of the type of offense that Iowa's ran and the quarterbacks that they have had, but he's someone who I'm very excited to see. I think that he is a very safe type of tight end. I don't think that he is going to be considered up there with the Luke Musgraves and them, but I think he's going to be a very good guy. And honestly, I hate to say this because he's a little bit bigger, but I saw a little bit of Chris Cooley in him almost in a way. Okay. And so I think it's interesting. I don't know if he's going to be able to play the H-back role, but I do think that that's kind of who he reminded me of going all through everything.
Calm down with that C word, man. There's somebody angrily right now like, how dare you?
Yeah, you can't compare anybody to Cooley, to Captain Chaos, brother. And it's probably Chris Cooley selling his art that he did on shrooms. Have you seen that? He makes a bunch of art.
Chris is the nice man. Guy. Posting ball pics posting ball pics. He would have been perfect for Twitter back in the day. If it was big when he was playing.
He was the original rock star.
Yeah. I actually did 2 prospect breakdowns. I had one submitted by Von Jingo on Twitter to do Hank Dell or Nathaniel Dell. Depends on if you want to go by government or street name. So I'm going to go by street name. Tank Dell. In 2022, 109 receptions, 2 yards south of 1,400 yards receiving, and 17 touchdowns in 1 year, 17 touchdowns. In 2021, 90 receptions, 1,300 yards receiving, and 12 touchdowns. He is an exceptional route runner. He has this burst coming out of his break that kind of really does separate rate on guys, and his kind of length, very long and skinny, reminds you a lot of Deshaun Jackson. Him being 5'10", 163 pounds, more of this thinner frame, so he's not going to be across the middle as much, but he has shown the ability when he does catch the ball in the middle of the field to be able to extend it, to be able to use his speed and get outside. So he's a guy that I really like in the deep threat game. Obviously, the 17 touchdowns tells you a lot about him because of that deep threat ability and also because of his route running, being in footwork, working in the red zone, being able to get those tiptoe catches, and he has a very good. He reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson, dude, especially deep downfield and catching the ball. You know, that over-the-shoulder Willie Mays catch that Deshaun just perfected here. He's very, very good at it. And then he has a ton of experience at punt return. Just look up Tank Dell's highlights on YouTube, and you're going to be blown away by the playmaking ability of this kid. Next guy was Devin McCain, the running back from Texas A&M. This was submitted by Andy Lockhart today in the UK. Oi! 5'9", 185 pounds, a junior. He had 196 attempts, 1,100 yards rushing, and averaged 5.6 on the ground with 8 touchdowns. He reminds me a lot of James White and being like kind of that check down running back you can just throw the ball to, but nothing really comes out of it, so to speak. But this guy is a very hard-nosed runner. He does run well in between the tackles. He rarely does he have hesitation. If he sees the hole, he's gone. Pass blocking is subpar. I will say that. He is good to an extent. He's good in his fundamentals, but he's not going to overpower anybody by any stretch. But this kid, he's good later rounds, and as somebody as a depth piece, special teamer, I think that's somebody that could really definitely help you out, especially in the return game as well. Devin Archer has some experience there, and he's not the biggest guy, but he's shown the vision to stay behind the blockers, and because he's 5'9", he stays low to the ground. They can't really see him, and out of nowhere, he's through that hole and he's gone. A lot like Reed on the weekend. So he's very good in that aspect. I like Devin McCain a lot. But Tank Dell, right now by NFL Draft Buzz, they have him ranked as the 7th best wide receiver in this class. And we already know that the wide receiver class for this draft is kind of lackluster, you could say, to an extent. But Tank Dell is 7th right now. It just shows you, sitting at 5'10", 163 pounds, the playmaking ability of this kid.
Crazy because he seems like the exact opposite of what you would expect for somebody named Tank. You know,
dude, exact opposite.
Pounds,
you're right.
Fast.
Well, you can't be. Your name can't be Nathaniel. I think of somebody
NFL.
Like you got to have another name, dude. You
Maybe
can't be
Tinkerbell
Nathaniel.
or something at that size. You know what I'm saying? I think
like Nate
Tank,
Dogg
or
something.
Like me,
Nasty
like
Nate.
6'2", 230, jacked out to the gourd.
I thought he was gonna be like a tight end or something.
Nasty Nate would have been better. I would have loved to hear Nasty Nate.
Yeah. Well.
All right, Hall. Who's your prospect, and what do you got?
We just released somebody. I can't say who it is though. You know how NFL Network always tells you like cryptic like messages, like they're releasing a safety who started 16 games for them in DC in 2022. Just say the name. Why are you being all cryptic about it?
Right.
Also releasing. Oh, safety.
But I'm doing. Hold on, all these notifications going on. I'm doing Olusegun Oluwatimi from Michigan. He's a center. He's a senior. He was a what was the award? The Remington Award winner.
Yeah. Kyle won the Remington Award.
Number one rimmer in the country.
I was very good at that. Good.
I was recruited. He was the highest recruit.
He was the quarterback of the best offensive line in the country at the center position. Some of the things that he's really good at are pre-snap checks and phases. He's really good at pointing out the blitzers and the upcoming danger, if you want to call it that, at the line pre-snap. Let's see. He has good body manipulation and positioning. Plays with good leverage. Creates seals and alleyways in the run game.
Yep.
He works best with tandem and guards and slide protections and combos. He's really good. He needs a little bit of work at picking up stunts and twists and whatnot. He doesn't really have the athleticism to get with the faster kind of interior defensive lineman defenders. But
that's what I was saying, dude. Laterally, if he has to move like misdirection, if like you do a step outside inside, he is a hard time adjusting to that misdirection movement. He's slow in that aspect.
Exactly. He's a capable mover, and like you see nowadays, like the Philly Eagles did this a lot with Jason Kelsey. Yeah. Obviously, he's like one of the best in the league, if not the best. But they use the center a lot nowadays in the run game to pull, and he's a capable blocker in the run game,
very good,
especially when he's pulling on the outside. Definitely a good puller. So he's a mauler, and then again, if this is a team that wants to be with the run game. They need interior offensive linemen. He could be a good, solid depth piece down the line.
Yep, and now that was very good breakdown, by the way. Obviously, Aluskan
On the
Oluwatimi is
fly, on the
very
fly.
good. Now we are joined by our next guest, Mr. Big Doug from the Big Douglas Show. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Big Doug.
All right. What's happening, fellas?
There he is.
I jumped in the call when we're talking about body position and stuff. I wasn't sure which podcast I got on.
It's the same one, Doug. It's the same one.
Unfortunately, yeah. This is Burgundy Zone After Dark. We do a lot.
It's the back end of it. But we wanted to
favorite side.
Yeah, we wanted to answer some fan questions, Big Doug. And this one is from the Colonel, if we want to answer these together, but I want to get your opinion first. This is from the Colonel. We have freed up $31 million in cap space in 24 hours. Are we going for Lamar Jackson, he asks.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
I wish. That'd be tight.
Yeah, it wouldn't. I know it's out there, right? That Bieniemy comes, and so obviously there must be a wink, wink, nod, nod that we're going to upgrade the quarterback position. But they freed up a lot of cap space. I don't think it's for Lamar. And frankly, if it's for Lamar, right, they're not even close to the number they need to get to just for Lamar, right?
Right, you're absolutely
Lamar's getting that bag.
I would say if the news was more pertaining to ownership, I think there would be more stock into that. But I think the freeing up the cap space is more in order to retain our guys here. Because obviously Cam Curl's coming up, and we don't want to have happen to Cam Curl what happened to Daron Payne this year, right? They kind of gambled with Daron Payne and lost that aspect, and this is why they're in this bad position at the moment. Don't want to have that happen with Cam Curl. Well, let's solidify that safety core. Now that you've let go of Bobby McCain, you're going to need that veteran leadership, so I would like to see Cam Curl get done sooner rather than later. But no, I don't think this is about Lamar at all. Hall?
Yeah, I don't think it's about Lamar. I mean, at the end of the day, he's going to be demanding. He wants a guaranteed contract, and obviously with the whole sale looming and everything swirling around that, I don't see Dan Snyder dishing out $200-something million in guaranteed money to Lamar Jackson or any player at that position or any position like that. So, yeah, I know a lot of people are like getting like sites because they're freeing up all this space and whatnot, but I expect a lot of that money to be allocated to retaining some of our players. I don't think it's going to be a big offseason, like a splash move like Curtis Samuel or William Jackson like you did a couple years ago. So just it's going to be a slow free agency period again, I think.
Yep. And now, Big Doug, this next question from the Colonel, and we'll go to you after that, Reed. How surprised are you that we just released Bobby McCain? Is the defensive back draft market so rich that we are confident we can get a couple defensive backs to make up for his departure, Doug?
I was a little surprised by the McCain cut. It wasn't a ton of money in it, 4.5, somewhere around there, million, I believe.
Yep.
Bobby played really well when they moved him into the slot last year. You know, when Forrest emerged as a guy that could play, and they got McCain. You know, when he was in Miami, that was it, right? Remember Ron was telling us about position flex. They played him in the nickel slot a lot in Miami, and I thought that's where he belonged anyway. So I was a little surprised just because I didn't think they had to. I think it shows more about Percy Butler maybe and what they think about what he can be next year. If you've got Cam Curl and Percy Butler could kind of slide into the strong safety spot, right, then it allows you to get Curl down into kind of that nickel spot where last year they did a lot of that 3 safety look, 5 DBs, 3 safeties. So maybe it's just more about the idea that they're not quite as worried about that traditional corner role in the nickel now that maybe Percy's coming along a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you to an extent. I do think that the draft is rich in defensive backs. We've heard Ian Cummings say this. We've heard Ryan Fowler say this about this draft class. You can get a lot of talent anywhere in the middle to late rounds and early, obviously. But I think this says a lot about guys like Danny Johnson. I think it says a lot about the backups and Derek Forrest of what they were able to do, because my big question is, was Bobby McCain brought here on a free safety salary? Like, did they pay him to be a free safety? And that's why the emergence of Derek Forrest is why they're thinking of how much they're paying him. Because they're going to pay him in slot corner, would it be a different amount? So that was surprising to me, just because I think the biggest aspect is that Logan Thomas, for example, or Charles Leonard or Chase Rouillet are high cap numbers, and they didn't make any decisions there, but they went down to the $4 million to save them cap space. I thought that was more surprising. I think the timing of it, that Bobby was before Carson or anybody else. I thought that was probably the most surprising part. Reed?
Yeah, you want to call me by my furry name? Come on, you know it. Say, hey, Fido. Say that.
Fido?
Say Fido next. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll answer this one. No, I was super surprised. I do think that that this is a very, very deep corner class, but like you and Doug talked about, I do think that this is probably a good thing. It's more indicative of how Derek Forrest played this season, and that Percy Butler, I think that they really like Percy Butler, and how could you not? I mean, the guy's very good on special teams. He's got all the measurables. I just think that it's a good idea to start clearing some cap space. You know what I'm saying? That way, when we go out and sign Orlando Brown, Lamar Jackson, all these big names, we'll have the money to do it. And when we bring Patrick Mahomes in, it's gonna.
I'm trying to figure out what was in my tea before I came and joined you. I
think he dropped some acid in his tea. Yeah,
the talking dog's great though. I mean,
it's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
I should read more often to keep the dog.
Because everybody always says that I'm such a dog. I'm such a dog. So I was like,
you got a lot of moxie, kid.
Yeah, I think it was more because I'm such a bitch. But I was like, yeah, maybe.
Paul, do you want to answer this, or can I move on?
Just go, man. Go.
Big Doug, this next question is from the bunker, from our guys Freddie Ham and Andy Burrows in the UK. Oi! Thank you, boys. Who's the big name getting cut and not here next season or restructuring their deals?
Oh, well, I mean, I think you've got two big ones already that just dropped. I don't know. I guess the next popular one is that I hear a lot is Logan Thomas. Again, it's not if you look at it, it's not a huge number. I think they probably were talking about corners a minute ago. They probably could use to extend Fuller, who had a pretty good season last year. And again, to go back to the previous question just for a second, I don't think getting rid of McCain is getting Fuller back into the slot, because if you remember, he didn't play very well there last year. In fact, he actually got much better when they stuck him outside, which surprised me. Rouillet, I wonder, I mean, I know they gave him a pretty good contract for centers a couple of years ago. He just hadn't stayed healthy.
Right.
But I think those are a couple I could see. Leno probably is in line for some sort of a restructure just to get the cap number down just a little bit. But I don't think you could go into even if you drafted tackle at 16, I don't know that you'd want to go into the season without Leno.
Yeah, for me, the big name that I'll say is Curtis Samuel. And no disrespect to Curtis. It's just because Sam Howell coming in and starting at quarterback, Bieniemy Brown showing what he can do last season. Obviously, naturally, you want the younger guys to get more experience there. But obviously, you need the most pass catchers you can get. It's just Curtis Samuel does have a high cap number. I think it's close to 10, if I'm not mistaken. And so maybe they can kind of help themselves out there, because they do have a kind of a good wide receiver room. But I have to say somebody, because Doug did bring up some good ones. So I just got to bring up somebody new.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with especially with Doug. I just think that the Logan Thomas, Chase Rouillet, I'm really it sucks because I really, really like Chase Rouillet a lot. He's fantastic when he's healthy. He's one of the most underrated centers in the NFL, one of the better centers in the NFL. It's just the best abilities. Availability hasn't been healthy in 2 years, and it's really hurt our offensive line. It's hurt their play. You can tell. So that's been frustrating. So I do think he's in line. I also think that I like the Leno restructuring, and I do agree with you, Doug. I don't think even if you bring somebody in, I don't think you can really afford to not have Leno on the roster this year, just because of his experience and what he means to this locker room, because he is such a well-liked individual, despite how he's played. So,
and he played 100% of the snaps.
Yeah, right.
Especially an offensive line that had dealt with injuries, it's always good to be able to retain somebody that is stable for you, because stability, I think, is all that they need on the offensive line. And I think that's the biggest concern.
And Kayvon Thibodeau's licking his chops at that. He loves that. He loves everything about that. He loves when Leno plays.
Yeah, I mean, you already hit the names.
Let me get this next question to you then. Let me start you off with this from Scott Hartley in the UK. Oi! Who is your biggest target in free agency?
Man, honestly, I haven't even really looked at the list, but if I had to, I mean, I guess everyone's talking about linebackers. So I guess if you're going to make a big splash or try to get a big name, sign one of them big names out there, I would say Bobby Wagner. I think that he came into this defense behind that defensive line with this defense on the back end as well. He's still great in coverage. I think he was still top 5, top 7, 10, whatever it was in the league in tackles last year. So he's definitely still at, not going to say like the height of his game, but he's still like an above average linebacker. Obviously a great leader in the locker room and on the field as well. So, and he's a guy that can step right in and be a difference maker on defense for you right away. So, like I said, without looking at the list of all the free agents out there, I would just say Bobby Wagner.
I think like somebody like Isaac Semelo, the guard from Philadelphia, older, obviously 29, but that's a veteran. Had 15 starts this season with Philly. One of my first finds of the free agency tracker, and that's somebody you should be keying in on because the Eagles are going to have to pay Jalen Hurts. They're going to have to move some things around. So maybe that's somebody that is a very good starter for them that they're not going to be able to retain. And his market value, I think, is only around $5.5 million per overthecap.com is what his projected market value is. I don't think that's too bad to be plugging in as a starter there. There's not much to risk, so to speak. What do you think, Doug?
I'm kind of along the same lines you are, Kyle. There's Ben Powers maybe is up in Baltimore. Nate Davis, I believe, from the Titans.
Yeah.
Both guards that are kind, and they shouldn't have hit their prime yet. You know what I mean? I think they're in their like late 20s. Ben Powers around 11, I think I saw. Nate Davis maybe around 8. Frankly, I don't think I'd beat big players. I mean, I guess if you want to, I hear people talk about Tremaine Edmonds. I don't want to pay $17 million for an off-ball linebacker when this defensive regime has pleaded with you to understand that they could care less about the linebacker position. I'd much rather bring Cole Holcomb back, frankly, for linebackers. So
I mean, look at it from Tremaine Edmonds.
I think O-line.
Look at it from Tremaine Edmonds' standpoint, Doug. I mean, would he want to leave Buffalo? Yes, of course he'd want to go get more money. But I mean, wouldn't you, if that was you, wouldn't you take less to stay in Buffalo? I mean, that's what I
would. But much like Rivera in Washington, I'm not sure I don't think they're going to pay anything. Yeah. Got Matt Milano, and I think they'll draft somebody and they'll keep it moving. I don't think they want to pay $15 million for a linebacker.
Yeah, he's got to bring his price down, man.
Isn't Tremaine Edmonds? He's from the area too, right?
He went to Virginia
Tech.
Virginia Tech.
Maybe hometown discount, but that's if he wants to, not win again in his career.
It wouldn't surprise me if he goes. It wouldn't surprise me if he went to Pittsburgh. I know his brother. I think his brother is actually going to be a free agent here soon.
Yeah, it looks like it.
But I think he did a good job with them last season.
Yeah, I got no.
Same draft class as John Payne too, I think.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
Yep.
Now this next question, Big Doug, this is from Scott Hartley again. What move are you making in the first round at 16? Are you staying put, trading back, and what position group are you taking? Corner, offensive tackle, or interior lineman?
I generally always want to move back. I think maybe if they fall in love with one of the tackles, and you had to move up 2 or 3 spots to get there, I actually think maybe this is the year to do some of that. We've got a ton of weapons, but if you can't protect the quarterback, then all those nice toys don't mean anything. So generally, I'm always trying to trade back. I think O-line is the most important. I could be talked into corner as well. Frankly, I could be talked into DN at 16 if there's a really good DN there too, just looking forward. But O-line, I think, is where I'd like to be at in the first round.
Yeah, it's hard to say this, Scott. I know it's a great question. I appreciate you for asking. It's just hard because you don't know who's going to be drafted in front of it and who's going to be available based on what you think the stock of the draft prospects are, right? But let's just say straight up, I would like to be able to move back, and my dream scenario for moving back is being able to recoup an extra first rounder for next season. Because one of the things that Hall keeps complaining about when I say that, just with going through Sam Howell, we have a good position to be, if he doesn't do well, we're going to be in a good position to make a move for a quarterback in the next draft. Well, if you have that extra first rounder, you have ammunition to not have to move up from all the way to number 1, but you can move up in the territory to get your franchise guy, i.e. Josh Allen, i.e. Patrick Mahomes. And that's what my dream scenario would be. But if that doesn't happen, if we're staying at 16, I want a lockdown corner. If you could get a Devin Witherspoon, then this kind of Bobby McCain release makes sense because Devin Witherspoon can play in the slot. He can play outside if need be. So he's somebody you can start off in the slot until Kendall Fuller's kind of moved out of the position, then he can move outside. So that would kind of make sense to me. And I think that if you're adding corners in this draft at any point in time, you're in a good position because looking at this division in general, there's some good wide receivers out there. And being able to shut down half the field, take away one wide receiver is such a pivotal tool for a lot of defenses in this league, and it can help you out in crunch times. And so I would much rather go down corner and then go with our kind of tackles. I don't know where Darnell Wright and DeJuan Jones are going to go. Those are the only 2 tackles I want to sniff in the first round. The only ones I want to mortgage anything on. So if they're there, then I'm all for it, but I'm not sure if they will be.
I think that they will be.
Yeah.
Ideally, yeah, I think you would like to trade back. And I do think that towards the end of round 1 would probably be where you would want to take a DeJuan Jones. That's right now. I mean, of course, this is all before the combine. That's a DeJuan Jones, possibly Darnell Wright, although I think he's getting more first-round consideration now. But, yeah, corner offensive line is ideal. And I think if you want to move up, you don't want to move up too far because you don't want to give up all those assets like we talked about. But ideally, trade back. But at the same time, sticking right there at that sweet spot in the middle of the first round at 16, I think you're still going to get a hell of a player. So I'm all for that as well. You know, I'm basically for anything, whatever you guys do, I'm cool with.
Shocker.
You know? Very
Shocker.
Indecisive.
Just like Mardi
Gras
Gras
in my life. Yeah.
Trade up
Pretty much. Yeah.
all your draft picks to number 1 and get Bryce Young. Yeah, I would probably option number 1 would be to trade back because I'm all about the more picks, the more chances you got to hit on younger players that can help your roster building out down the line if they become starters or even a role player that later on in the draft. So if you can trade back and recoup like a second or a third round pick, especially with the track record of this regime of hitting on third round picks like Antonio Gibson, Benjamin St. Juste, guys like that. So
third round picks every time he sees them. He's always
exactly. He values those more than first round picks.
Oh.
But yeah, so I mean, second option would be if you stay at 16, then I would go cornerback. I just think that, like you said, Witherspoon, if he's still there, Joey Porter Jr., if he's there on the board still, I would go with him. And you can still get a quality starting lineman in the second and third rounds, I think, because this draft is pretty deep with linemen as far as interior goes. So I think that, I would trade back a couple spots or get a guy like Joey Porter Jr. or Witherspoon at 16.
Yeah, I know. In the other, I think last week, Big W, you made a comment in our one group chat about your boy Kelly Ringo coming out, and I think this Bobby McCain release, Kelly Ringo is another guy whose stock would rise at Washington's eyes with that release because of his versatility, being able to be a safety / corner in the slot kind of aspect. I think that would make a lot of sense.
And he probably is available in the second. His stock's dropped just a little bit.
What's that cornerback who tried to stab his wife? Devin in the first round. He's a first round prospect. Devin.
What are you
Devin
talking?
who? He's a cornerback. He tried to stab his wife. Devin who?
Dude, I'm not gonna say it. I know what you're trying to do. He didn't try to stab her with a spoon, okay?
No, with a knife.
He's trying to set a joke up.
I know. I'm not allowing it to happen. Is what's happening right now. So this question is submitted.
It's an old Reese Witherspoon joke.
I know. This next question is by Tony Shivers. He asks, Michael Reed, will Howell use a different voice talking to Bieniemy than he did Turner?
I think once game day gets all competitive, you're going to hear that dog come out of him. You're going to hear it. Oh, yeah. You're going to hear it. He's going to be like, and Eric Bieniemy's going to be like, what? What are you saying? Howell's going to be like, come on, man, shit, dog. And you're gonna be like, "How? Calm down." You're gonna love it. Yeah. I'm gonna love it.
Mom always tripping, man.
You boys ain't ready, partner.
All right. Now this next question is from Meese21, Big Doug. With the scouting combine starting tomorrow, how much will it affect us with the coaching staff not being fully staffed? It's a good question.
It is only on the offensive side, though, right? I mean, other than Harris leaving, I don't think there's been any shakeup to the defensive staff, and supposedly they're promoting from within for that DB coach position. So I would think not, and you guys know this. I mean, the work has already been done, right? I mean, the scouting combine is more about industry folks getting together and elbow bumping and cheersing and kind of finishing what's been a long grind of a year to get to the scouting combine. And then, because after that, you've only got pro days and then the draft. So work's pretty much done. So I'm not sure that, and particularly since I don't know how much offense we're really drafting this year, the fact that the offensive staff isn't put together in its entirety doesn't cause me too much pause.
Yeah, and I don't think it has all that much to do with it. This is the reason why you hire scouts, Brandon, and your coaching staff shouldn't be making those picks, right? There should be the scouts supplying it, the general manager, head coach deciding on who to go with, and then saying, okay, position of coach, this is what you have. Here's your new toy. Find a way to make it work with what we have. And so I don't think it has all that much to do with it. It's just being able to, that they have the same language as Eric Bieniemy. That's the biggest question with this new coaching staff that they're bringing in. Are they on the same page? And I trust that they are being able to do that. So the combine, I wouldn't worry all that much about, to be perfectly honest. So I would relax with the positional coaches. I think everything is going to be okay, and let Rivera and company do it. They've been doing a good job so far.
Yeah. He tried to stab her with a knife.
With a spoon?
With a spoon. Yeah, with a knife. Yeah, you got it. Go ahead, Hall.
I don't even remember the question because that was such a great joke. The combine. So, the combine is pretty much you're just checking off the boxes that the scouts did and just making sure that what the scouts put in the report matches up with what you see at the combine, what you see as far as the testing goes and stuff like that. And like Big Doug said, this is more about like all the executives and the coaches and the agents and there's people like that being all in the same place and getting in those backdoor deals and those backroom deals and stuff like that. Guys making just shooting the shit basically. So I look forward to like all the conflicting reports and different stuff that comes out during the combine more than I actually look forward to like watching the combine.
Yeah, the back door is something Reed is very familiar with.
Yeah, I was about to say, Kyle loves watching men run in those tight shorts.
This last question is for Tim Towner in the Discord chat. And I will say the combine is more like a cherry on top because what you're trying to see is that a guy worked on his body, has worked really hard to be able to get bigger, to get stronger in the time from college. It shows work ethic. And so it's more like a cherry on top to what you see on film. And you want to see whatever happens from there on out. But this last question, Big Doug, from Tim Towner. As we are in QB purgatory with Howell scheduled to be QB1, how would you prioritize the team needs when restocking this offseason to help him most? Upgrading the pass protection, upgrading the run game, strengthening the defense? Should we spend any capital on more weapons without addressing these other issues first?
Well, I don't think we need to add more weapons. I think it's just O-line at this point is what you do to help them. And really, we should be excited about the idea that, I mean, if Hal can play at any sort of a decent level, then, just think about you've started the window, right? I mean, and that what everybody talks about is starting the window on a rookie contract. So, I mean, I think I think the offensive coordinator was the biggest deal of them all for him. And then being able to protect him, I think, is next.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's crazy. I don't know if you guys saw this, and I was talking about it on the podcast earlier today. Since 2000, John Conn was on with Kevin Sheehan. Since 2000, the Redskins, Commanders, Washington football team, whatever, has averaged over 20 points a game for a season 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
5 times since 2000. So protect the man, get him an offense that prioritizes scoring points, and that's what he needs more.
Yeah, for me, it's prioritizing. It is about helping Sam. I won't say it's about helping Sam Howell. I'll say it's more about elevating the offense. Because going into last offseason, the defense needed to fix themselves on third down. They increased to number 1. this season, right? They got better. The offense took a step back. They were mid to late 20s in almost all offensive statistical categories. So that is objective number one for me personally, is fixing that. And so how do we able to fix that? Well, first we get a new OC in here who can kind of change the image, the identity of it. And then from there, we have to prioritize getting the players in here that match that identity. And so that's the next step here. And so I think it's about elevating the offense. That's what we should be doing in any sort of capacity, but hitting the draft where we need to, getting the best talent in the long run. And for me, I think that's looking at corner and tackle and that sort. But I don't think that we should be trading any capital away to add any more weapons. I think that somebody's bringing up like Mike Gesicki, or going again for like tight end like Darren Waller or something like that. I don't think we should be going down that route. Let's continue with what we are and let Eric Bieniemy. Let's get better in where we need those offense, but we don't need to be adding to anything that doesn't really need it, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't.
Yeah, I feel like, same way. Outside of like the offensive line on offense, I don't really think they need to be adding any more pieces, especially like spending capital, as far as like giving away capital to bring in pieces for the offensive side of the football. And honestly, if you look at the defensive side of the football, I think that if they can draft well, like they have been doing over the past couple of years, and kind of get those tier 2, tier 3 type of guys that can come in and just be serviceable or average to above average players, like look at 2020 with Logan Thomas, J.D. McKissick, those type of signings. I think that they should be good to go. But like you said, number one priority should be Eric Bieniemy and the coaching staff, on the offensive coaching staff, and Ron Rivera, GM, getting together, identifying what type of linemen and what type of just guys up front that they want to have, and the type of identity they want to have up front, and going out and getting those guys. And like you said, protecting Sam Howell, putting him in the best position to succeed.
Ratio,
and 2-to-1 pass ratio. I love that. That sounds good.
Nah. That's for losers, man. We like to milk the clock where we are. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up.
18 points a game. I love that.
Hell yeah, I love that.
All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode called Winds of Change. Lots coming down the pipeline here very, very soon, fellas. And I think we're all very excited for the future of this franchise, regardless of where it goes financially or in the business side of it. I think we're in a very, very good position. Boys, I can't thank you enough for joining me. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions in. But before we get out of here, Big Doug, just want to talk about your podcast, your social media handles, where people could follow you, just in case anybody watching doesn't follow you yet and would like to, but we know they do not exist, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. Big Douglas Show, anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube or whatnots. We're on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays now. Draft segments on Wednesdays. Inside the Command Center segments on Fridays, and who knows what might happen on Mondays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Doug, you kill it too, man.
Mondays are crazy, bro, on Big Doug Show.
Super
All right,
Mondays.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up this episode. I'm Kyle.
To the guy that said something in the comments last time, my eyes are open this time, so I appreciate that.
I didn't see that comment. Somebody made a comment about you looking asleep.
He said I was on a kite, basically.
Yeah, I just assumed he meant Hall. I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah, he said home, but I was like assuming he was talking about me, because who else's eyes are like halfway closed majority of the time?
Yes. And I'm Michael from the show Love on the Spectrum, and I'm also Fido in my pastime.
All right, everybody. We'll see you again on Thursday. Have a good, safe week. Until next time, Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!